Welcome to the Cheating Wife Stories channel. Her laughter in the photograph wasn't meant for me. I can still hear it, echoing through the years each time I scroll too far on my phone. An old picture, half blurry, capturing her grin when she thought nobody else was watching. I never deleted that photo. Maybe I couldn't. Maybe it was the last shred of the life I believed in, back when I was still naive enough to think her every laugh belonged to me. I can't remember the exact day I took it, only that we were in the kitchen. Morning sun, or maybe afternoon. Her smile caught the light in such a way that it made the moment glimmer. God, I loved seeing her happy. At the time, I didn't question why she was so radiant, why her eyes shone a little too bright. She was on her phone, texting. I assumed it was harmless. I assumed so many things. The first crash of reality came swift and sudden. I got a call about my daughter's visa application. Just routine, they said. And they needed a simple DNA test to confirm paternity for some paperwork. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that should have threatened the ground beneath my feet. I remember that day clearly. Stiff seat in a cramped government office. A middle-aged official adjusting his tie and glancing between me, the papers in front of him, and the clock behind me as if trying to finish before lunch. He looked at the results, let out a small chuckle, then froze when he realized I wasn't in on the joke. "Sir," he said, awkwardly pushing the paper across the desk, "there seems to be an inconsistency here." An inconsistency. A delicate way of saying you are not her father. I waited for him to grin and say it was a mistake, a lab error, a glitch in the system. But he didn't grin. He stared at me as if expecting me to snap. Maybe he'd seen it before. Men discovering the fabric of their lives was woven with a stranger's thread. After an excruciating silence, he cleared his throat and said, "I'll give you a moment." I just nodded. I felt my insides nodding into something that might have been terror or rage or heartbreak. My little girl wasn't mine on paper. The official left the room. All I heard was the buzzing of fluorescent lights overhead, and all I saw were those scrawled numbers and results, dancing across the page in slow motion. That was the day everything cracked. I didn't confront her immediately. I'd always prided myself on being methodical, calm, traits that served me well in my finance job. So I kept the papers in a locked cabinet in my home office and tried to pretend life was normal. I thought, maybe there's a misunderstanding. Maybe Cassie will have an explanation that makes sense. But deeper down, beneath those rationalizations, suspicion coiled around my heart. And then came the second crash, the one that shattered any illusions I had left. One evening after work, I found a cosmetic bag at the back of our car. Cheap leather. A strong perfume that Cassie never wore. Didn't even smell remotely like her. Inside it, I discovered a folded note. 2 more nights. Then we're free. No name, just initials. TR, that same TR from the officer's badge. My mind flicked back to the day of the DNA result. That middle-aged man with the tie, the sideways grin. Of course, I realized with a numb shock, it might not have been him. Maybe it was someone else in that department. But the letters matched. He was the reason for her laughter in that photo. The reason my child wasn't biologically mine. The reason my wife would hum in the shower sometimes with a smile I hadn't put there. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was caving in. I sat there, in the driver's seat, just staring at that scrap of paper. 2 more nights. Then we're free. Free from what? From me. From the carefully constructed life we built. Our wedding day. The time we moved to Seattle. The birth of our daughter. Were they all illusions? If so, I was a fool who believed every second of it. That night, I went inside, found Cassie in the kitchen making tea, and watched her from the hallway. I didn't say a word. My hands shook so badly I had to stuff them in my pockets. The note pressed into my palm like a blade. I almost wanted her to ask me what was wrong, just so I could fling the truth at her, watch it slice through her composure. But she didn't ask. She never even glanced in my direction. Her phone buzzed on the countertop. She picked it up, typed something quickly, and bit her lip in that nervous habit of hers. Still, I stayed silent. She turned, saw me, and offered a small smile. I forced a return smile, feeling my face twitch. She said something trivial, maybe asked if I wanted tea, but my ears were ringing, and I just stared at her. She shrugged lightly, lowered her gaze, and walked out of the room. That was our entire conversation. Later, long after she'd gone to bed, I found myself sitting on the living room couch, the bag and notes spread out on the coffee table. A single lamp glowed overhead, making everything feel stark. I tried to piece it all together, but my mind churned aimlessly, 1,000 jagged questions slicing through me. With trembling hands, I searched for the officer's name in my files. Trevor Reed. The same initials. The same smirk. And now, apparently, the father of my daughter. My entire reality cracked open right then. I'm not sure how many hours passed. Dawn light seeped in through the blinds by the time I mustered the energy to stand. The next day, while Cassie was out supposedly doing errands, I sat at my desk. My reflection in the monitor looked like a stranger, hollow eyes, jaw clenched. I opened tabs for immigration records, for Interpol watch lists, for ways to create bureaucratic nightmares if one knew the right words to say and the right people to contact. My profession might have been finance, but I was no stranger to regulatory networks and compliance systems. The question wasn't if I could ruin her life. It was if I wanted to. And the sickening truth was, oh, part of me really did. See, I wasn't the type to fling plates or punch holes in walls. But that note on the cosmetic bag, that had ignited something raw in me. Some primal sense of betrayal I couldn't quell. She intended to leave. They intended to vanish together. Her, my daughter, and this man who had systematically inserted himself into my life. The laughter that wasn't for me had turned into plans that didn't include me. My mind reeled, stuck between rage and heartbreak. Then I recalled the day I'd taken that damn photo. Cassie was texting someone with a strange intensity, smiling at the screen. And I'd captured it because I thought she looked so beautiful, so alive. I didn't realize she'd been sending her heart to another man. I told myself I needed proof, real, solid, undeniable evidence of the affair. Maybe the DNA test was enough. Maybe the cosmetic bag was enough. But I needed the final push to kill the last shred of hope. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed her. Late that Friday, claiming I had a last-minute work meeting, I slipped out of the house and trailed her car from a distance. Heart pounding, palms slick on the steering wheel, I stared at her taillights as we navigated the roads out of our neighborhood. She turned onto a smaller highway heading north, away from the city. My breath quickened with every mile, every curve. I nearly lost her twice, each time cursing under my breath. But I found her parked in the back lot of a shabby motel, the neon sign flickering overhead like some cheap omen. I watched her get out of the car, looking around nervously. She didn't see me. I slouched in the driver's seat, my pulse hammering. Then he appeared. Trevor Reed. I recognized him immediately. Gray slacks, a badge clipped to his belt. They exchanged a few tense words under the buzzing fluorescent lamp by the stairwell. The next moment, he had his hand on the small of her back. I could see Cassie's shoulders relax, leaning into his touch, the final crash. I sat there in darkness, my heart raging, my mind screaming to do something. But what? Storm in and confront them. Threaten him. She was walking upstairs with him, her body brushing his in a way that made my stomach lurch. Part of me wanted to tear him apart, but I was welded to the seat by a kind of numb horror. My brain told me to stay, to confirm beyond all doubt. I turned off the ignition, got out of the car, careful not to slam the door. My legs were shaky. The wind bit at my cheeks. Every step closer to that motel felt like stepping deeper into hell. I found the room easily enough by the silhouettes moving behind the thin curtain. A sliver of light glowed at the bottom of the door. As I crept down the hallway, I heard muffled voices, then Cassie's laugh. lighter, more intimate than anything I'd heard from her in ages. I wanted to believe she was the woman I once married. Instead, I heard the sound of them together, the creak of the mattress, the rustle of clothing. My heart hammered. My throat closed. Blood roared in my ears. The next moments blurred in a haze of shame and fury. Their shadows flickered against the curtains, shapes entwined, her hair falling across his shoulder, his mouth at her neck. The sensual hum of her voice hit me like a punch. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to vomit or break down the door or run. My entire soul felt like it was on fire, but my hands stayed clenched at my sides. I did nothing. I just listened to the proof that she was giving herself to him in ways she no longer gave to me. It felt obscene to stand there. I felt dirty, like I was intruding. Then I realized, they intruded on my life. They destroyed my family, my dignity. My daughter, my girl, was his. And I'd been feeding them both dinner, paying bills, living my life in utter ignorance. Swallowing bile, I inched away from that door. My mind was a storm, swirling images of them intertwined. The taste of betrayal was so bitter I could hardly stand it. The drive home took forever. In reality, it was 30 minutes, maybe 40. I don't recall the traffic lights or the roads. All I remember is clutching the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My chest ached as if someone had punched me repeatedly. Once I pulled into the driveway, I just sat there, head against the seat, eyes closed, exhaustion pressing down on me. If she came home, I didn't hear it. Maybe she spent the whole night in that motel. Maybe she came in the back door while I was paralyzed in the front seat. Either way, by morning she was in the house, rummaging around as if nothing was amiss. I got out of the car, unsteady, and stepped into the kitchen. She was there, keys in hand, hair brushed neatly. She glanced at me, expression guarded. I noticed her lipstick was smeared slightly. I said nothing, just stood in the doorway. She walked past me like I was a ghost. "I'll be back," she muttered. "Need a few groceries." I just nodded, or something close to it. My jaw locked. That was the sum total of our interaction. Later, while she was out yet again, I found myself in our bathroom, staring at her curling iron on the counter. The memory of that hateful note churned in my mind. My breathing sounded loud in my ears. That's when the idea came. A ring. Her wedding ring. She never wore it anymore, left it in a drawer somewhere. But I was the one branded by the promise. So I turned on the curling iron, waited, my chest heaving, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. I pressed the scalding tip against my shoulder, shaping the circle, a brand. The pain seared bright and immediate. My entire body tensed. The smell of scorched flesh rose. I grit my teeth, forced myself to keep it there a moment longer. Because I had to. Because I had to remember what it cost to believe in her. In the days that followed, the brand on my shoulder formed a blistered ring. Every time I moved, the pain pulled at my nerves. Each spark of agony fueled me, reminding me. She chose him. This wasn't an accident. It was a choice. She let me build a life around lies. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything, didn't show the wound to anyone. But it lived under my shirt, raw and permanent, and it kept me on track. I combed through every resource I had, every contact, every regulation. I thought carefully about the steps. I needed to ensure Cassie would not vanish with my child. If that meant her being flagged at every border, so be it. If that meant twisting the truth so Interpol, consulates, and even small-town border agents would see her name and freeze her out, fine. I wasn't lying. I was simply telling the truth in the darkest possible way. She had used false pretenses for certain applications, forged or hidden documents, fudged the timeline of our marriage so certain things would appear legitimate. That was enough to raise suspicion. The child's paternity discrepancy. Enough to raise more. Soon, lines were drawn, red flags raised, and I had more clout than she expected. When you work in finance, you learn how to navigate bureaucracies swiftly. And Trevor? I gathered what I could on him. He was an immigration officer, ironically with a history of borderline unethical practices. I gave the right tip-offs to the right people, ensuring his life would become a labyrinth of inquiries and formal reviews. He might never be fired if he had enough friends in the system, but he'd be under a microscope for a long time. I didn't plan to let them run away together. I'd lock that door so tight they'd have to break the law outright to escape, and if they did, I'd have them. Meanwhile, I had to keep functioning. I had a daughter to take care of. My daughter, regardless of the DNA. I felt a twisting ache every time I looked at her, a swirl of love and pain. She was only 5, old enough to sense tension, but not old enough to understand. I told her, "Everything's okay," in that calm, fatherly voice. She nodded, then played with her dolls or watched her cartoons. The normalcy made me want to scream. Cassie, on her part, avoided me almost entirely, as though I were the stranger. Maybe guilt weighed on her. Maybe she was just biding time until she and Trevor could break free. But I had sealed that path. She just didn't know it yet. The final push came on a Tuesday afternoon. I quietly submitted all the documents, planted all the seeds. We had an argument over something trivial, milk left out on the counter. But it escalated quickly into accusations. She said, "Why are you so distant? What's going on with you?" in a brittle tone, as though she were the victim. I responded with a measured calm that frightened even me. "What's going on with me? I know Cassie. I know about Trevor. I know about the motel. I know about the DNA test." My voice never rose above a murmur. She froze. Her face went pale, then red. She stared at me like I was brandishing a knife. I can explain," she started, but then she just stopped, eyes flicking to the hallway. Maybe she worried our daughter would hear. In that moment, she looked so small, so undone. A month ago, I might have felt pity. Now, I just watched her in silence. When she realized I wasn't going to explode or rage, she tried another angle. "It's complicated." "You don't." "Don't what?" I interrupted. "Don't understand." "I think I understand perfectly. You planned to leave me. You took advantage of me. You used me to keep up appearances, lied about a child who isn't mine, and you want me to stand here like a good little doormat while you run off. That about right?" She had tears in her eyes. "I never meant." I held up a hand. "Don't lie again. Just don't." She pressed her lips together, trembling. My chest felt like lead, but my face remained impassive. She wanted a dramatic reaction. She wanted me to shout, maybe so she could feel justified in her betrayal. But I refused to give her that. Silence crushed the last of her protest. She retreated to the bedroom, sobbing. I didn't follow. That evening, I heard her calling Trevor in hushed tones from the guest bathroom. I caught fragments of words. "He knows. No, it's bad. I don't know what we're going to do." Her voice cracked, raw with desperation. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her, but the brand on my shoulder stung, reminding me this was her choice. 2 days later, everything came crashing down for her. She discovered the unstoppable chain of red tape I'd unleash. She received notice from the bank about her account being flagged pending verification of her identity, some small technical glitch I'd orchestrated. She found out her passport renewal got denied, that her name was on some questionable watch list. Then she realized she couldn't just hop on a plane or cross a border. Her phone calls to Trevor turned frantic. The tension in our house escalated, air thick with the unspoken war between us. "Why are they investigating me?" she demanded one night, slamming paperwork onto the kitchen table. "They said there are allegations of fraud, stolen time." "What does that even mean?" I shrugged, sipping my coffee. "Must be a misunderstanding." She glared, tears brimming. "You did this," she said quietly. "You're punishing me." I didn't answer. I just looked at her. Maybe I wanted to see if she would hate me. Maybe I needed her to feel it. She let out a shaky breath and left the room. I stared at the empty doorway long after she was gone. my heart pounding from the aftershock of confrontation. I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I loved her still, even then, but the pain was too vast. The child in the middle, my daughter. She was the reason I wasn't leaving. The reason I got up in the morning and tried to fake normalcy. I took her to school, packed her lunch, read bedtime stories. She still called me Dad, and as far as I was concerned, that wasn't going to change. Every time she asked me, "Where's Mommy?" I just said, "She's busy," my tone carefully neutral. In the nights that followed, Cassie slept on the couch or in the guest room. We barely spoke. I sometimes caught glimpses of her pacing, phone in hand, tears glistening on her cheeks. She looked terrified. Good, part of me thought. Let her feel it. Then, inevitably, guilt stabbed me. She was still the woman I once adored, the mother of the child I cherished. Was I truly so cruel as to want her life in ruins? But the memory of that motel, her laughter in the photo, the scorching brand on my shoulder, those things kept me on course. Trevor tried to intervene. One Sunday evening, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find him standing there in plain clothes, a forced casualness about him. My pulse jumped. I stepped onto the porch, closed the door behind me so my daughter wouldn't see. We stood face to face in the fading light, the autumn chill biting at my cheeks. He cleared his throat. "Rick, right?" I didn't respond, just stared. He shifted, arms folded. "Look, Cassie told me you know everything. You've done something to complicate her life. I want this to end quietly. We don't need to make things worse." I noticed he carefully avoided admitting guilt. He just spoke with that official, clipped tone. I almost wanted to laugh. "You telling me to back off?" I asked softly. His nostrils flared slightly. "That's not what I'm saying. But if you keep pushing, it'll get messy. For everyone. This is between me and her, not the law." I let the silence hang. My thoughts swirled. He was worried about an internal investigation, about the heat I'd already put on him. He wanted me to capitulate. For a long moment, I simply stared at him, measuring him. Then I spoke with a soft finality. "It's already messy." A flicker of unease crossed his eyes. "There's no reason for you to blow this up. The kid." I caught my breath. "The kid is mine." My voice wavered, but my gaze was steady. "Don't you dare talk about her like you have a right to her. You don't." He looked like he might protest, but then he exhaled sharply. "Fine. I tried to make this easier. I guess we'll see." I said nothing else. He walked away, his footsteps stiff on the driveway. I stood there until his car disappeared down the street, my pulse pounding with righteous fury. In the coming weeks, Cassie tried to salvage her job, her accounts, her ability to function. But piece by piece, every door shut in her face. She'd fill out forms. They'd come back stamped with questions. She'd receive a call from some agency wanting to verify her documentation. The simplest tasks became bureaucratic nightmares. Eventually, she realized she couldn't leave the state without a slew of complications. Trevor vanished from her life when the internal probe got too heavy for him to handle. Maybe he was interrogated. Maybe he had bigger fish to fry. I didn't care. I suspected he was looking for a different path, cutting his losses. She was alone, and I was there, watching. I thought I'd feel triumphant, but mostly, I felt hollow. The sense of betrayal never left. Sometimes, I'd hear her crying at night, and it would tug at something deep in my chest. I'd remind myself of that motel scene, the hush of their voices, the erotic sighs. Then I'd push the pity away. Our daughter began to notice the tension. One night, she asked, "Dad, are you mad at Mommy? She cries a lot." I forced a smile. "She's just sad. Grown-up things." She nodded, unconvinced, then snuggled closer to me on the couch. I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes, but fought them back. My daughter was the one piece of innocence left, the one tether to a better life that might have been. I kissed the top of her head. silently promising I'd protect her, even if it meant this fractured existence. 1 month later, Cassie moved into a small rented apartment just 2 streets over. The constant arguments, the tension. She said she needed space, though we both knew she had nowhere better to go. She had no job, no way to travel, no real support. Her mother had passed away years ago. Her father was estranged. She was trapped in the same city as me, reliant on scraps of state benefits and whatever leftover finances she could salvage. Her eyes were hollow when she packed her suitcase. I stood in the living room doorway, brand on my shoulder still healing, letting the silence speak for itself. "Where is it?" she asked, looking at me with trembling lips. "Where's what?" I responded. "My wedding ring," she said, voice hoarse. "You never even asked me if I wanted it." I didn't answer. The ring was somewhere in the house, but I'd stopped caring about it. It didn't matter. She walked out the door carrying a half-filled suitcase, her shoulders sagging under the weight of self-inflicted misery. I watched from the window as she drove away, swallowing the urge to break down. The house felt colder, emptier, but also strangely calmer. Time passed. My daughter stayed with me most weekdays, sometimes visiting Cassie on weekends. Even from a distance, Cassie's presence loomed in my thoughts. I'd occasionally drive by her street, just to see. She'd be out walking her small dog, eyes downcast, hair unkempt. She no longer had that bright, confident stride. The world she'd imagined with Trevor was gone, replaced by a tangle of restrictions and quiet shame. I was the cause of that, and I was proud of it, and horrified by my own pride. Because deep down, I loved her. Maybe some twisted version of love. I wanted her to suffer and be near, both at once. She texted me once, late one night, asking if we could talk. I ignored it. She tried again. I finally answered with a single line. "Talk about what?" She never replied. That was the last attempt. I found out later she tried to get a job at a local cafe, but was turned down. Word travels fast in a small community, especially if you're flagged in certain systems. She'd have to do menial, under-the-table work. She was stuck. I was stuck, too, in a sense. The brand on my shoulder healed into a dark circle of scar tissue. Sometimes I'd rub it in the shower, reminding myself why I did this. I found little joy in my job, though I continued to show up. The house was silent without her. No clinking of her teacup, no soft footsteps, no half-finished puzzles on the table. Just empty rooms. The child's laughter remained, but even she felt the shift. We'd watch cartoons on Saturday mornings, and I'd see her glance at Cassie's empty chair. She never said anything. She didn't have to. I thought about confronting Cassie one last time, demanding she explain. Why him? Why that note in the cosmetic bag? Why let me believe my daughter was mine if she knew differently? But I never did. Maybe because I knew the answers wouldn't heal me. Maybe because some questions are better left to rot in silence. The day I finally saw Trevor again was in a grocery store parking lot, pure coincidence. He spotted me near the entrance. I felt my muscles tense. He walked toward me, not quite menacing, but purposeful. There was a hollow look in his eyes, as if the investigation at work had squeezed him dry. "So you got what you wanted," he said, voice low. I gazed at him, reminded of his hands on my wife in that motel room. "I guess," I replied flatly. He huffed a humorless laugh. "You must feel proud, turning your own wife into some kind of blacklisted ghost." I shrugged. My mouth was dry. She made her choices. He lifted a brow. "So did you. Enjoy your cold bed, man." I clenched my jaw, but he walked away before I could respond. I stood there, groceries forgotten, trembling with a swirl of triumph and despair. He was right in one sense. That bed was cold, and no amount of vengeance could change that. Weeks slipped by. Life found a new normal. I'd see Cassie sometimes during custody exchanges for our daughter. Icy politeness, little eye contact. I lost track of Trevor. Heard rumors he transferred out of state, or maybe he quit. I neither knew nor cared. I told myself I was fine. I had my child, had my job, had peace. Right? But one sleepless night, I paced the living room, glancing at that old photo on my phone. Cassie laughing in the kitchen. The image made my chest ache. I ended up in the garage, rummaging through boxes until I found her wedding ring. It was still there, hidden in an old desk drawer. The overhead light flickered, casting a dim glow. I turned the ring over in my hand, feeling its weight. Once that ring symbolized my whole world. Now it was just a circle of metal, meaningless to her, branded into my skin for me. I remember putting it on the workbench, half considering smashing it with a hammer. But I didn't. I left it there, next to a pile of nails and an old tape measure. I couldn't quite bring myself to destroy it. Some pathetic flicker of love still lingered. One evening, our daughter came home from a short visit with Cassie and asked, "Why doesn't Mommy come over anymore?" I felt my breath hitch. I looked into her innocent eyes and realized how confusing this all was for her. "Sometimes grown-ups just need space," I replied, forcing a gentle tone. She nodded, looked down at her shoes. "She misses you," she said quietly. Then she went to her room. I stood there in the hallway, heart pounding. "She misses you." The next night, I watched Cassie from my car. She was walking her dog along a cracked sidewalk, shoulders hunched. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She didn't see me. She looked lonely, as though she carried the weight of the world on her slight frame. And it struck me. We were both trapped in the ashes of what once was a marriage. In that moment, I felt a surge of conflicting feelings. Anger, pity, longing, triumph. I wanted to drive off, but I stayed until she turned the corner. More time passed, enough for the initial shock to dull. I found myself in the yard one afternoon, raking leaves, going through the motions. The house loomed behind me, silent and watchful. A neighbor strolled by, asked if everything was all right, if Cassie was out of town. I gave some bland explanation about marital issues, then retreated inside. I found myself wandering the rooms, running my hand along the walls, remembering better days. That old ache returned, the brand on my shoulder twinging as if in sympathy. By now, everyone in our circle knew something was off. I hadn't gone around broadcasting the affair, but rumors spread. Cassie had retreated from social media, from neighborhood events, from everything. She was isolated, jobless, friendless, forced to remain within a radius that felt to her like a cage. I orchestrated that cage. Sometimes, the guilt threatened to choke me, but so did the memory of her betrayal. I wrestled with the contradictions every day. The local immigration office eventually closed the case on Trevor. He avoided criminal charges but took a transfer to another district. Cassie, however, was left behind, marked by bureaucracy. She'd try occasionally to fix the mess, but her attempts fizzled under the burden of fees, interviews, and endless forms. I had accomplished what I set out to do, make her existence a labyrinth. I told myself it was justice. She'd destroyed my trust, my sense of self, my illusions of family. She shouldn't get to walk away clean. And yet, sometimes I'd dream about her returning. Dream she'd walk through the door in that ragged sweatshirt of hers, eyes brimming with regret, and I'd fold her into my arms. The next morning, I'd wake up drenched in sweat, half hating myself for wanting that closeness again. Months drifted into a year. Our daughter turned 6. I hosted a small birthday party at home. Cassie asked if she could come. I said yes, partly for our girl's sake, partly out of morbid curiosity. She arrived in a simple blouse and jeans, hair pinned back neatly for once, face pale and nervous. She brought a store-bought cake. Our daughter ran up and hugged her. Cassie's eyes shimmered with tears. She glanced at me, a question trembling on her lips, but I avoided her gaze and busied myself with arranging plates. The party was subdued, mostly for kids. Cassie hovered at the edge, smiling tightly. When it was time to cut the cake, I watched her as she watched me, our eyes meeting across the dining room. In that fleeting instant, We both felt the ache of what we'd lost. Then we looked away. After the candles were blown out, after our daughter squealed with delight at a new toy, Cassie tried to approach me near the stairs. "Rick," she started, voice trembling. I held up a hand. "We'll talk later." She nodded, swallowing back emotion. I never followed up. By nightfall, she was gone, and the house echoed with empty spaces once more. Eventually, I realized I'd done enough. I didn't remove her from the watch lists, but I stopped fueling the process. I let the system idle. She was locked in the consequences of her own choices, but I didn't fan the flames further. My revenge felt stale now. The brand on my shoulder had faded into a scar, the edges darkening. It still hurt sometimes in damp weather, a dull throb that reminded me of heartbreak. And so we drifted into an uneasy stalemate. She lived 2 streets down, in a cramped apartment that smelled of stale coffee and regret. I stayed in our house, the place that once held laughter and the promise of a future. Our daughter hopped between us, oblivious to the deeper chasms. I saw Cassie occasionally at the grocery store. We'd exchange stiff nods, no words. If the conversation had to happen, for our daughter's schedule or some detail about school, it was short, polite, like discussing the weather with a stranger. One evening, well after my daughter had gone to bed, I found myself outside Cassie's apartment building, parked under a street lamp. I could see her lights on, faint through the curtains. No sign of Trevor. No sign of life, really, besides the flicker of a television. I'm not sure why I was there. Maybe to remind myself of what I'd done. Maybe to see if she looked happy or miserable. Even from that distance, I could sense the heaviness inside those walls. I turned off the engine, just sat. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked worn, older than my years. A father. A betrayed husband. A man capable of scorching someone's life over heartbreak. The question gnawed at me. Was I still in love with her, or just the memory of who I thought she was? Did it matter? I caught a glimpse of her shadow crossing the window, pausing as if she sensed my presence. Then the curtain shifted closed, shutting me out. I stayed another minute, then drove away. She betrays a man who would set the world on fire for her, the story goes. Now she's living in the ash, trapped by the consequences. But if that's the sum of the narrative, then what's left for me? A man scalded by heartbreak, staggering through the rubble of a once happy home, clinging to the only innocence left, my daughter. Maybe that's all I am now. Still, on the nights my daughter sleeps at Cassie's, I roam the halls with too many memories swirling in the silence. Sometimes I glance at that photograph of her laughing. I still haven't deleted it. The brand on my shoulder twinges, a phantom ache, reminding me that some wounds don't heal perfectly. Sometimes I sit at the kitchen table, just like that first night I found the note, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant bark of a dog outside. I think about Cassie's fate, how she can't leave, can't truly start over, stuck just close enough to remind me of everything I lost. I love her, even after all. That's the bitter truth. My chest tightens with it, and I want to tear my hair out some nights, hating myself for still caring. But I can't help it. She was my wife. She gave me a daughter, even if not by blood. She filled this house with warmth once, and there's a piece of me that can't snuff out the memory of that warmth, no matter how much it hurts to remember. The days blur together, each one a quiet echo of the last. Autumn turns to winter. One evening, I find myself in my office, scanning old files, half considering finally dropping the flags on Cassie's record. Then I see the curling iron on the bathroom counter across the hall. My shoulder twitches. I close the files. Maybe I won't. Maybe it's a monument to the cost of betrayal. Maybe that's what we're doomed to. Two lost souls, linked forever by a child, a scar, and a broken vow. Months pass again. My daughter's hair grows longer. She starts talking about a friend's puppy. She asks if we can get one. I consider it. Cassie tries to get a new job at a local diner. I hear about it third hand. They turned her down. I wonder if I should intervene, let her have a chance at a normal life. Then I recall the memory of that motel door, her body pressed to Trevor's. My jaw tenses. I do nothing. One night, I'm on the couch, half watching a news broadcast, half lost in thought, when my phone buzzes. It's a text from Cassie. She's asleep. Everything's fine. Our daughter is spending the weekend with her. I just type back, okay. Then I stare at the screen. For a moment, I think about telling her I miss her, or that I want to talk. But I set the phone aside. I'm not ready for that. Maybe I never will be. After a while, the quiet house presses in on me. I wander the rooms. In the corner of the master bedroom stands an old hamper, one side broken. I catch sight of something behind it. A small photo album. I recognize it from years ago. A series of pictures from our first anniversary trip to the coast. Cassie in the sand, arms outstretched, laughing. Me behind the camera, trying to capture every moment. My hand shakes as I turn the pages. The brand on my shoulder pulses with memory. I close the album gently and tuck it away, my heart hammering. Outside, a cold wind howls. The world feels dark, suspended in uneasy silence. I think about the next steps, if there are any. Maybe I keep living like this, quiet, stoic, a father devoted to his child. Maybe Cassie lingers 2 streets away, unable to leave, slowly discovering that freedom is never coming back. I created that labyrinth. She built the reason for it. Our guilt tangles together like barbed wire. In my darkest moments, I wonder if we have been happier if I'd let her go. Let her vanish with Trevor so I could rebuild from scratch, free of resentment. But I didn't. And now we're locked in the ash. I close my eyes, trying to remember how it felt when I loved her without question, how her laughter sounded when it was meant for me. Could that ever happen again? My breath catches at the impossibility. The house groans with the shifting night. A streetlight flickers outside the window. In my mind's eye, I see Cassie across town, lying awake on her couch, staring at the ceiling, tears in her eyes as she wonders if tomorrow will be any different. Then I'd flick the lamp off, and the light goes out,